This is a fictionalized monologue inspired by public reporting and recognizable patterns of elite influence, not a literal confession from any real person. Yeah, you want the blueprint, not the polished version, not the version that sounds responsible and safe. You want the ugly mechanics, the social physics, the way a shadow network gets built in daylight while everyone insists they never saw it. So, listen, the network is not one place, it is not an island, it is not a mansion, it is not a plane. Those are props, things you can point at, so you can pretend the problem has edges. The network is a habit, a set of incentives, a quiet agreement inside high-status rooms that embarrassment is worse than harm, that reputation is more sacred than reality. Yeah, once you understand that, the rest makes sense. I did not enter the top rooms by forcing my way in. I entered by being useful. I arrived as a helper, a smoother, a person who can make the annoying parts of power feel less annoying. I learned early that the wealthy do not worship morality. They worship efficiency. They worship the feeling that their time is too valuable to be interrupted by consequences. So my first product was relief, not money, relief. You look at a calendar full of obligations, a dispute you do not want in public, a donor who needs to be stroked, a journalist who will not go away, and I say calmly, it is fine, it is handled, I know someone, I can take care of it, and you exhale. And that exhale is the beginning of ownership. Because once I have given you relief, you want it again. Yeah, people think influence is persuasion, like a speech that bends minds. No. Influence is friction reduction. It is removing obstacles so the path you already want to take feels smooth. And here is the trick. You still feel like a decent person because you did not break the rule. You simply let someone else solve the problem. That is brick 1. Outsourced guilt. Brick 2 is legitimacy. You do not need everyone to respect you. You only need a few symbols that make everyone else relax. A certain address, a certain invite, a certain donor list. A photo where you are standing near someone the room already treats as important. The photo does the work. People see it and assume someone else vetted you. Social proof is the strongest drug in elite culture. So I collected symbols. I made sure my name sat adjacent to prestige, a foundation event, a university donation, a conference sponsorship, a seat at the kind of table where the napkin is folded like art. Once you are adjacent to respected brands, people donate you their laziness. They do the rationalizing for you. Yeah, rationalization is the fuel. Brick 3 is access. Access is not just meeting famous people. Access is controlling distance between them. You become a bridge. The person who can make the introduction happen fast, the person who can get a meeting on a day when the schedule says no, the person who can place two powerful egos in the same room and then disappear, leaving them to feel like the meeting happened naturally. They do not pay for access with cash. They pay with deference, with silence, with favors, with their own credibility. So I curated rooms. I learned how to mix types. A financier wants intellectual legitimacy, so you invite a professor. A politician wants donor comfort, so you invite a billionaire. A billionaire wants social sparkle, so you invite a celebrity. A celebrity wants protection, so you invite a lawyer. Everyone thinks they are using everyone else. I sit there quiet, watching the trade. Yeah. The trade is always happening. It is just called networking when the suits are clean. Brick 4 is obligation. This is where influence becomes permanent. You do a favor that is small enough to feel harmless and big enough to be unforgettable. You arrange a meeting that bypasses protocol. You help someone avoid a messy public dispute. You connect a donor to a project that makes them look generous. You solve a problem in a way that cannot be explained in a press release. And you never say, "You owe me." You say nothing. You act like it was effortless. That is what makes it stick. Because if they thank you too loudly, they have to explain what you did. So they thank you quietly. And quiet thanks turns into quiet loyalty. Yeah. Obligation is a debt that cannot be repaid openly. That is why it has power. Now, how does the network become underground if everyone is smiling in public? It becomes underground by normalization, by turning the abnormal into routine. A powerful person leans in a hallway, in a car, in a private corner of a gala. and asks the question that reveals everything. They do not ask, is this right? They ask, is this going to be loud? That is the true fear. Not evil, loudness, exposure. The kind of noise that triggers donors, voters, boards, spouses, investors. So the network behaves like an immune system. It identifies threats and tries to contain them. And sometimes the easiest containment is to punish the person who speaks. That is why the underground survives. Because the system makes speaking expensive. And speaking is expensive in a world where prestige is oxygen. Here is the boring part that feels like a thriller once you notice it. The network lives in paperwork, in logistics, in scheduling, in the soft, dull trail of modern power. A driver's manifest, a guest list, a calendar entry, an assistant's email that says confirmed, a donation ledger, a hotel receipt, a text message that looks harmless until you read it next to another harmless message and another, and suddenly you see the pattern. The underground is not hidden. It is just buried under everyone's refusal to read. Now, you asked for deeper analysis, so here are the tools. Said plainly, without romance. Tool 1 is ambiguity. You keep your story slightly incomplete, not because you cannot explain it, but because the gap invites fantasy. Different people fill the gap with what they want. Competence, genius, usefulness, charm. The ambiguity becomes a custom mirror. Tool 2 is compartmentalization. Nobody sees the whole picture. Staff know logistics. Lawyers know documents. Donors know the narrative. Friends know the charm. Victims know the harm. And because no single person feels they hold the entire truth, everyone feels innocent. Compartmentalization is how large organizations commit horrible acts while everyone insists they were only doing their job. Tool 3 is time. Time is protection. Delay is protection. Complexity is protection. If you can stretch an accusation into years, you exhaust the public. You exhaust reporters. You exhaust victims. People move on. The predator continues. Tool 4 is prestige laundering. You attach yourself to respected institutions, and your association becomes a shield. When someone raises concern, the institution feels threatened, not by you, but by the possibility it accepted you. So it defends itself by defending the relationship, at least at first. Tool 5 is intimidation by consequence, not by fists. Lawsuits, phone calls, exclusion, career threats delivered as polite advice. It leaves no bruise. It destroys a future. And let me add something people miss because it sounds too ordinary. The network is not just rich people shaking hands. It is infrastructure. Banks that treat questions like inconveniences. Law firms that speak in soft language so the truth does not sound sharp. Public relations people who can turn a scandal into a misunderstanding, then into noise. Nonprofits that become reputation shelters. Private security that does not just protect bodies, it protects secrets. Accountants who can make messy realities look neat on paper. You do not need a conspiracy when you have a supply chain. And the supply chain is full of people who tell themselves they are neutral. I am just doing my job. I am just following policy. I am just handling communications. I am just moving money. I am just arranging travel. I am just scheduling meetings. Every just is another brick in the wall that keeps accountability out. That is why the underground feels invisible. It is made of normal tasks. There is also a social rule at the top that makes the machine stronger. Social death. In most places, being wrong is embarrassing. In elite circles, being wrong can erase you. Invitations vanish. Calls stop. Board seats disappear. And because that fear is always in the air, people learn to avoid conflict. Never be the first to say the ugly thing. Never be the first to name it. That is why the first person to speak often gets punished. Not because the room loves evil, but because the room fears chaos. Now imagine a charity board meeting. Polite faces. Someone raises a gentle concern. Just a question. Are we comfortable with this donor? The room goes still. Then a high-status voice smiles and says, let us not speculate. Let us focus on the mission. The mission becomes a curtain you can pull across anything. That is reputation laundering. You wrap yourself in a mission, And anyone who questions you is framed as attacking the mission. And then there is the part that sounds like a movie, so people assume it is fiction, which makes it safer. Sometimes there is a notebook, sometimes it is a locked drawer, sometimes it is nothing more than memory. Did it exist? Maybe. But the point is not the object, the point is the social map. Who owes whom? Who fears whom? Who needs what? Who will fold if you offer belonging? Who must be handled with threats? Yeah, leverage is usually psychological before it is anything else. And here is one last piece of analysis, the simplest one. Predators do not start by asking for the biggest concession. They start by asking for a small one, a small secrecy, a small rule bend, a small lie you tell yourself. Then the next line is easier. Step by step, inch by inch, until you wake up and realize your identity is built on not admitting what you have been part of. And when someone like Trump turns politics into a never-ending show, that step-by-step erosion accelerates. You are trained to feel, not to verify. You are trained to pick a side, not to read a record. You are trained to treat questions as attacks. Yeah. The louder it gets, the easier it is to hide in plain sight. Now, you ask for a few moments that feel cinematic, and I can give you composite scenes that capture how it feels, without claiming they are literal historical facts about any specific real person. Picture an office with soft lighting and a view that makes the city look like a toy. The desk is too large, the person behind it is too calm. They do not offer you a chair right away because they want to watch you stand. They ask what you do. You do not say, I am a fixer. You say, I help people structure decisions. I help people connect. You use clean nouns. They like clean nouns. Then they tap a folder without opening it. That folder is a problem with a name. Not a moral problem, a brand problem, a risk problem. They ask, can you make this go away? Yeah. And you understand. They mean contain it socially, keep it off the front page, keep it out of the board meeting, keep it away from donors. Another scene, a gala, cameras, flash, everyone's smiling with their eyes while calculating with their minds. You move through the crowd like you belong, greeting people by first names, never lingering, creating the impression you are in demand. That impression makes others desire your attention. A politician approaches, a donor approaches, a professor approaches. Each wants something. Each pretends they do not. You give them a little, a compliment, a promise, a phone number, a hint. Yeah, you are careful not to give too much. Too much looks eager. Eagerness looks weak. And then the strangest scene. A phone call at 2 a.m. Not romance. Not passion. Fear. A voice says, tell me what you know. It is not a request. It is a confession that their own network is leaking. You answer with a calm tone that sounds like medicine. I will look into it. I will handle it. Try to sleep. Yeah. Try to sleep is a spell in elite life. Now, the question people always ask is, how did others not stop it? How did they not see? They saw pieces. They saw oddness. They saw rumors. They saw staff look down when certain names were mentioned. They saw excuses. They saw people vanish from the orbit without explanation. But seeing is not acting. Acting requires risk. Acting requires believing the institution will protect you. Acting requires believing the public will care. Acting requires believing you will not be punished for being first. And too often, that belief is false. So they choose safety. They choose career. They choose silence. They choose the line that saves them in the moment. I do not know the details. Yeah, that phrase is a lullaby people sing so they can sleep next to a monster without feeling the bed shake. Now, you asked me to criticize Trump if it fits. So I will speak in patterns, the way these rooms speak. There is a type of powerful man who treats association like an asset. He leans in when it benefits him. He denies when it costs him. He rewrites relationships. He attacks accusers. He turns every question into a performance. He makes supporters feel that admitting a fact is betrayal. Donald Trump has lived on performance for decades. He uses volume like a weapon. He frames accountability as persecution. He teaches an audience to defend him as a team identity. And when a culture rewards performance over truth, underground networks thrive because shamelessness becomes protection. Yeah, when reality becomes optional, the powerful can always say, I barely knew him, I do not recall, it is fake, it is political, it is a witch hunt. And half the room applauds because applause is easier than thinking. Now, let us talk about recruitment, because this is the part that looks ordinary and is anything but. Recruitment is never a job posting. It is a vibe. Someone arrives in the orbit and is tested. Can they keep a secret? Can they tolerate discomfort? Can they follow instructions that are never written? Can they pretend not to see what they saw? Can they smile while swallowing something that tastes wrong? The ones who cannot are gently pushed away. Not punished, just excluded. They stop getting invites. They stop being returned calls. They fade. The ones who can are rewarded. Proximity, trust, a little power, and that little power changes them. It makes them feel special. It makes them feel above rules. Yeah, that is how you turn ordinary people into protectors of a rotten system. You do not need to threaten them. You seduce them with status. Now, what happens when sunlight hits? A reporter, a lawsuit, a whistleblower, a victim who refuses to be quiet, a document that leaks, a photo that resurfaces, a name that becomes toxic. The first response is containment. The second is narrative. The third is intimidation. The fourth is delay. Public statements full of vague denials, attacks on credibility, claims of bias, claims of conspiracy, threats of lawsuits, attempts to reframe the story as politics, loud noise to drown out simple questions. Yeah, noise is the strategy. Exhaustion is the strategy. If the public is tired enough, it stops demanding clarity. So where does it end? What breaks the machine? Incentives? That is the only real answer. The machine breaks when silence becomes more expensive than truth. It breaks when institutions are forced to choose between reputation and reality wins. It breaks when whistleblowers are protected instead of punished. It breaks when survivors are treated as the center of the story, not an inconvenience. It breaks when records are preserved. When journalists refuse to be distracted. When the public refuses to be trained into apathy. So if you want a practical antidote, yeah, do the boring thing. Keep records. Ask follow-up questions. Demand dates, names, documents. Reward people who tell the truth early. Protect them. Because the underground survives on vagueness, and vagueness dies when you insist on specifics. Yeah, it breaks when people stop confusing prestige with virtue. So I will end with the simplest confession, the one that matters more than any name. The underground influence network is built out of small favors, small silences, small rationalizations, repeated until they become lifestyle. That is the trap. It does not feel like a big choice. It feels like 100 tiny ones. And the way you break it is also small at first. A question asked anyway. A record kept anyway. A boundary held anyway. A survivor believed anyway. A door closed anyway. Yeah, do not be hypnotized by the velvet rope. Do not be soothed by philanthropy. Do not be distracted by performance. Do not accept the excuse, I do not know the details, from people who profit from not knowing. And do not accept the political trick that says accountability is partisan. Truth is not partisan. Harm is not partisan. The only thing partisan is the urge to protect your side at any cost. Yeah, that is the confession. Not a place, not a prop, a system, a habit. And if you are listening to this, do not look away. That is all.